Thanks to Colonial Brewing Co. for sponsoring the pod today.
Thank you, Colonial.
For those of you who may not know,
It's pros and cons time!
Mr. Smith?
Hey, who's that?
David Zakapakarakis.
Wrong.
How the bloody hell do you say that?
Pros and cons.
What is going on, everybody?
Welcome to another Pros and Cons episode.
Yeah, I know you're in a good mood today, aren't you?
Very, very good mood, mate. 5 in a row. We the lid's on, but we're going all right.
I'm in a good mood too because those baggers. Have you seen that? The blue baggers.
What have you won now? What is it? He's 5-2, I think. Tegi is coach.
5-2, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Pushing for the top job.
Yes, that's just going to be super interesting because there was a lot of rumours about big fish, getting the big fish somewhere, you know, whether it was Alistair Clarkson or Roosie or someone like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's making it. Well, the interim coaches this year are making their play for it.
Exactly.
Very sure they reckon's pretty close to getting that gig too. So
I know. So it's interesting, but big episode today. We've got to one of the stalwart families of the AFL. I mean, these two, the Wallaces, Terry and Brent Wallace, covered all areas, covered all bases of AFL: player, a coach, an umpire, and a media personnel.
And VFL, I guess, if you want to throw Brent in there for a second one.
Exactly, as well as that. So they've covered all areas. It's going to be a great chat to get stuck in with them. And I think, they'll provide plenty of stories. Just a different dynamic in terms of how it all goes about when, sort of one players and coaches and the other one umpires, and if they either cross advice, give advice to each other, and about different aspects.
Can't wait to talk to them. I've known them for a long, long time, and Terry got me a gig at Richmond, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And Brent, I used to play bloody cricket in the front yard with him and growing up. So
yes,
I've known these guys a long time. So I'm really excited to see him and have a chat.
Perfect.
But mate, let's talk about your game yesterday.
Just got over the line, didn't we?
What a win! Thank you. I got 9 tips, by the way.
So we keep our fans on our toes. That's the most important thing, isn't it? We're an exciting team to watch, I guess, because the games are close. But I'm assuming fans wouldn't want us to win games like that too often,
especially against the bottom of the barrel team.
Yeah, I mean they played good footy. Give them credit. They jumped us early. They got out to a great start in the first quarter, and we didn't respond to their pressure or their contest work at all. And we come into halftime pretty disappointed in the way we were going about it, but also respecting that they were playing some good footy. So we turned it on late. We left the run. Well, we turned it on the third quarter and got in front and sort of looked like our momentum was our way and we could really shut the game down from there. But again, give them credit. They came at us in that last quarter, and it really took sort of 2 special plays. One by Hooksy. Do you reckon he deserves a wine this week?
I reckon you got to give him a wine, don't you?
Yeah, he's done it now twice this year.
You missed the one that won your 200th.
Yeah,
and now you have to. He needs a wine now.
Yeah,
surely.
he's done it twice.
Every player going to bring a wine in for him this time.
Well, the thing is, his parents own a winery, so he gets enough wine, mate.
Well, you know what? You shouldn't give a wine because you should have kicked a goal that probably wouldn't have needed his goal.
Yeah.
And they didn't call it a goal.
No.
So I don't know.
It was interesting, that one. It was during the game, actually, Razor Ray obviously was umpiring the game yesterday, and so I didn't really know. I mean, kicked the ball, thought it went through midair, then it sort of dropped late, and it was, in the end it was over the line, but I didn't know that at the time. And 30 seconds later, you hear the crowd, and obviously we had majority of our supporters travel so well, and we had the majority of the crowd there yesterday, and all of a sudden you heard the groans and boos and that kind of thing. So I looked up to my right and saw the scoreboard, and it was a freeze frame of the ball over the line, and I was fuming at that stage. If you have that emoji, you got the bloody fuming, the smoke coming out of the mouth and the eyes, and I went up to Razor and I said, mate, that was clearly a goal. And he just looked at me and said, David, does it look like I'm wearing a hat? In typical Ray response. And I sort of didn't have anything to say back to that because clearly he's not wearing a hat, so he's not a goal umpire. So,
well, I think that I don't like the fact that we have this tech that in a second they could see it was over and they couldn't just go to his ear and say, that was a goal, stop play, and we'll review it properly and show it on the screen and it's a goal, and then that's fine. Why have I get that there's rules that they put in place for this to happen, but the reason is so that they don't miss stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you relate it back to soccer, they have the VAR rule, and that is that if the ball goes over the line and it's contentious, whatever the play continues, and then the guy from the third umpire box or whatever the box speaks to the umpire on the ground or the referee, and the referee stops play and then awards the goal if it's a goal. So I don't know.
It'd be hard to do, surely.
It wouldn't be hard to get on the mic to Ray or any of the umpires on the field and just say, nope, that was a goal, stop play, go back to the middle, because in the end you're not wasting any part of the game, because that part of the game, so the kick out or the play that's played on that 10 or 15 seconds is irrelevant. It doesn't exist in the game of AFL. So you take back all those stats because the actual goal was a goal. So you just quickly stop play, reset the clock back to whatever it is, and then just ball the ball up, because that's the correct ruling on the ground that goal should have counted, and then the ball just goes back to the middle. So it's not like the game's going any longer, or you're sort of stopping the flow of the game or whatever, because that part of the game shouldn't happen. It should just be deleted from that 15 seconds or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like it. I think that it should have been a goal, but it made the game, I guess, a little bit closer, a bit more exciting for those who are watching who didn't care as much, I guess. But it would have been nice if they used the tech that they've been trying to put in place. And for once it worked. Like half the time it doesn't even work, or they don't use it properly. And again, they didn't use it properly this time.
Yeah, it's just about obviously getting the right tech in, or even just the way we're going to use it. So going forward, what we're going to do, whether you can, I don't know, put Hawkeye into every stadium that the AFL has been played, and you can see that. I mean, we see Snicko now, I think, is on the
but that wasn't in your.
post.
I think they tried to review a few of the goals in your game last night that they thought might have hit the post. They didn't have Snicko at that ground, obviously, but that kind of annoys me too, that they got tech that they use.
Certain grounds.
Yeah, on certain grounds. Like you got to roll it out everywhere. You got the money to do it. Just do it and do it properly.
I think that's the thing that most people are frustrated with. If you've got tech and you're going to introduce it, it's either you're all in or you're all out. And to be honest, mate, I wouldn't care if we're all out, because then some results will go your way and some results don't go your way. It's just the way it's been happening since under 10, since under 12, since under 14s, all that kind of thing. And if you don't have that technology, then fine. Like, let's just not use it. But you kind of can't really go half in, half out. It's like, all right, you're either all in. Every stadium gets it. Every stadium gets the same technology, same process. Like the NBA, all the control center go back to, there's people in a control center, so every NBA game has the same technology. So I think if you do that across the whole board, do it. But if you're sort of doing half and half, then why don't we just not do it until we get the technology to do it? Anyway, it's interesting to see what happens in the next couple of years in that technology space. But that's for us to see.
Yeah, that's a goal you didn't get for your season, mate.
Yeah, I know, that hurts.
Frustrating. Well, we're not going to do pros and cons this week, because we want to roll straight into Terry and Brent, who are ready for us.
Yes.
But I'll tell you one thing. I'm just gonna say it anyway, because Ben Simmons is out now. He was my pro the other week. Ben Simmons is out of the basketball, not playing now. He's called it, and I'm pissed.
We've got a recurring theme here that our pros turn into our cons.
I know,
so
it's twice now.
It's twice. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens next week if we roll back
maybe
in.
he's not going to come back and play, so he can't turn it back into my pro. I'm not happy.
However, is he in Melbourne at the moment?
I know. We might get him onto the show, and I might put it to him. Probably a little bit nicer, because he's a big man.
Yes, yes.
But
let's get into our chat, mate.
Let's do it. Terry and Brent, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks very much for having us, guys.
Yeah, no, glad to be here. Thanks for having us in, and looking forward to having a chat.
It's a good Monday to have him in, Daniel.
I knew you'd be happy to have him today.
It's good for you.
Monday. Yeah, well, good.
Right. It could have been pretty bad for you.
Could have been bad on a couple of fronts. It's good that we got an umpire in here too. So
could have been real awkward.
We can get into that. Topic later.
I was sitting there yesterday going, okay, this could be an interesting chat today.
It's an interesting chat anyway, except he's happy.
That's the only difference. Yeah. With 1-5, so I'm pretty happy. Yeah, in a row.
Yes.
So it's good.
Doing really well. So obviously, I was super interested to get you guys in and have a chat, because obviously AFL player, umpire, AFL Hall of Famer, by the way. I haven't said congratulations to your face. I sent you a text, but haven't sent
congratulations.
Congratulations, first of all.
I'm not an umpire, but I'm
not an umpire, coach and player.
Done
and
most
with
things.
the dynamic of Brent, who's an umpire, so I thought that would be interesting. Have you guys chatted much? Obviously, you have together, but to other people have been interested in that dynamic?
Not really. We haven't really chatted much about it at all. I must say, when Brent went from playing at Box Hill to deciding to take the umpire path, the first time I went to an Eastern Division under-19 game, which was his first game umpiring, to walk in and stand by yourself and spend the next 2.5 hours watching the umpire was the most weird dynamic I've ever been involved in ever. I didn't care less about either side. I think it was Blackburn Mitcham or something like that. You're sitting there just watching the umpire. It was a very, very strange dynamic.
It's a different dynamic because you haven't got any fans around you to support the same team. I'm assuming you'd be there almost by yourself watching it and having no one around you. So I guess the calls and all that, you're sort of watching, it's just by yourself. You're making the decision and loving the game by that. So it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, look, and what you do is basically don't get near either supporter groups.
Yep.
So the furthest away you get, the less noise you get. Because what I found early doors is that from an umpiring point of view, you hear more at local, and every level you go up, there's more people there, and it more just comes white noise at that stage sort of thing. But when you're back to the local leagues, you can hear everything that's sort of said.
Yeah, that's true. Could you hear him cheering you when you made a good call?
No, not quite. But it was a funny sort of situation to get out there and actually be umpiring, because probably I didn't really know what I was doing out there much either. I was sort of running around. I think at one stage the ball came towards me and I'm like, I've got to get my distance. So I turned around and ran away from the football, and I was like, I should probably be watching where everyone's running from and make sure no one's being hit. So
I was going to ask that question of the making that change to actually having to follow the ball both ways and always running around as opposed to doing that. So that was an issue at the start.
that was the biggest thing to adjust to, because you come from a playing background where you see ball, get ball, and you try to run in and actually go at it. Now, as an umpire, you've got to get away from it so you can take in the whole contest and watch everyone in front of you. So it's definitely a big adjustment to make, but we got there in the end.
We've seen it happen, once in the AFL when umpire caught the footy.
That's twice.
Over in Perth.
Twice now. So it was actually a game. So the main one's Peter Carey taking the mark over in Perth. But in my second AFL game ever, I've just adjusted from the forward line into the centre, and Hamish Hartlett had it out on the flank, and he's gone to switch the ball inboard, and he's just pinned the umpire straight on the chest, and he grabbed it and goes, and threw the ball back to Hamish and goes, you take your kick, and then he goes, no, I have to ball it up because that's the rule, and that's what I have to do. So end up running into the middle. And then laughing, running back to the other area, just going, what are the odds?
How do you find your best umpire games when you're in that? It's just such a different dynamic going from playing to playing to umpiring, and then how do you best find? Do you watch a lot of vision during the week to review your game? Obviously you do it, but are you one that really watches it by yourself, then away from your external umpiring when you all get together and that kind of thing? How do you best go about it?
Yeah, so I watch every game back, and start to finish, and you go through the game probably similar to what you do as a player, but as a player, I suppose you're looking for your moments that you're in, and as an umpire, you sort of got to stay in the game the whole time. So making sure that you're watching the whole game back and having, I'm at this angle and looking in. So we review every decision that we make and that we don't make as well. And then watch it back, and then we send in a review to our coaches and then go through the footage at training as well. So it's a long process, but I think the games that we sort of aren't noticed too much are the ones that I think we've done a pretty good job.
Now, Terry, for you as a parent and a coach in your life, obviously, of Brent, do you get involved at all and give some advice, whether it be a father or as a coach or umpire, like player that's played the game, coached the game, going, mate, maybe you might do these decisions or that kind of thing? Do you get involved at all?
Well, there's one other dynamic as well, is when I'm commentating the games that he's umpiring.
Exactly,
because
yes.
the other commentators are really sort of looking for you. What do you think? So it gets pretty tricky, pretty interesting at times. We have a chat most games. I try to watch, if I'm not working myself on another game, at the same time I try to watch it live as much as I possibly can, so that I can give my feedback, but he gets his own feedback anyway. But we normally just have a bit of a chat, and most things went all right, or have a look at this one in the second quarter. I think just the same as parents would with players, doing exactly the same sort of thing. But he's got to live his own life. I'm not a real strong one for parent input. Having coached, I've seen parents that sort of overstep the mark at times. So for me, let him do his thing and just sit in the background, really.
You say that, Terry, but I'm not surprised that Brent is an umpire because I feel like it's in the bloodline. We obviously grew up living in the same street, and we used to play sport all the time, and Terry was always the adjudicator of anything that we would do. We used to play Olympics where we'd have all the different, and you would always set the rules and judge it. We also had, if you hit it onto your balcony, it was 6, but it was a dollar value, wasn't there, associated?
I think it was a 50 or 100.
No, I think we had $100 for which was no good for me because I was a left-hander, so I was going on the offside trying to get it.
But I don't think anyone got that, by the way, or they claimed they did, but no one's.
Well, that's why I set it at 100 because I knew no one was going to get it up there. So.
You're fairly safe.
But look, as I sort of said, you've got to have somebody. That's Switzerland, and that was my role, sort of in the local area. So. Look, it was interesting when he decided to change. I must say that I thought it was the right decision because at that sort of stage he'd had a few major injuries, and I just sort of thought it was going to be difficult having missed the draft, having missed the rookie opportunity. We're seeing more players now coming through the VFL. It's changed a little bit, but back then it wasn't really, the openings weren't there. So do you go back to local level and continue to play and play at a high level, at local level, where you're putting your body on the line for a few bucks a week, but you're doing it more for the love of the game, but you're still getting knocked around after already tearing the peck off the bone and doing a few of those sort of things? Or do you stay at the elite level where you get a good opportunity to get an earn out of the game, but everything's at high end, elite learnings and doing things at the highest possible level of the game? I thought to me it was a no-brainer, but it wasn't my decision. I just had to sit back and stay completely out of it and sort of let Brent make his own calls. And we had a couple of conversations. I sent Brent to speak to a couple of people in football that sort of I respected in different levels, like management and that sort of stuff. Just go and have a coffee with them, have a chat about what you can do and what you can't do, and let him make his own call on it.
Well, talk us through that. What was the process like? Because, we played junior footy together. You were Northern Knights, played through the ranks, and then, talk us through your decision to end up crossing over and becoming an umpire, which you probably yelled at a lot in your career, as everyone does. But, talk us through it.
I don't know whether to call you Skip today or what I should be calling you. But, so coming through that process, obviously played to 20, so played under 18s with yourself at Northern Knights, and then went across to Box Hill and spent 2 years there, sort of trying my wares there, and only managed to get a couple of games with a strong Hawthorn connection there. There was it was hard to sort of get a consistent place, especially as a sort of small, more so outside than inside player. So it was a tough couple of years. As sort of Dad said before, I had a couple of issues when I was playing senior footy. So the first year I had glandular fever. I lost 10 kilo, which I couldn't really afford to lose. And then sort of went across to just for a family holiday to Bali and got the start of the cholera virus over there. So put the 10 kilo back on and then lost the 10 kilo again. So sort of to lose 20 kilo within a year, obviously two sets of 10s. And then the next year came back and was actually coming in for my first senior game for the year, but we had a bye. So I said, I want to make sure I go back to Old Carey that I was playing at the time and get a good game and sort of feel confident going into the first senior game. And I tore the pec off the bone. So just like a run of things where just nothing goes your way. And I still planned on coming back to sort of playing footy the next year. I wasn't sure whether it was going to be sort of local or Box Hill, and decided Box Hill. And then watched Jordan Bannister actually do his first game as a player in the NAB and decided to sort of come across to it from there. So, it was a bit of a long journey. And then to sort of, I went to a couple of games with the umpiring people. I went and caught up with a few people, recruiters and management, and spoke about different pathways of if I was going to continue playing or if I was going to sort of go to umpiring and where my skill set sort of lied and the career opportunities it would give. So at the end of that, I thought I'll give it a go. At 20 years of age, I'll give umpiring a go, and if it's not what I want in my first year, then I know I can always come back and at least play sort of good local footy.
Just on that, did you speak to Jordan Bannister or Lee Fisher and ask them for any advice? And if so, what did they give you on being able to have that transition?
Yeah, so I spoke to Banner a couple of times, and he was really good with me. So sort of met up with him the first session in with the AFL. He came to my first ever meeting, and we had a bit of a discussion with the whole umpiring group and Banno. But then Banno just grabbed us afterwards and said, look, if I was you, mate, and you got this opportunity, I'd go for it. And then there was actually some other umpires that I discussed that said, don't rush into, like, if you're still interested in playing your footy, take your time and follow that pathway, because this might be here in a few years' time. So for me, it was simply a challenge and something to have a go at, and an opportunity that I thought would be really cool to have a crack at.
That's did you find that the transition from being a player to then having to just run, you were already a pretty good runner as a kid from what I remember, but did you find there was a step up in the amount of running?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I used to be at the front of most AFL of sort of my team's running groups. I was always in that first couple and would go pretty well, and I was probably sort of middle of the pack, and that definitely surprised me, because I thought I was always a pretty strong runner. I'd spent some time actually when Dad was at Richmond doing some time trials and stuff with them, and going pretty well in those.
Winning the time trials, was he?
I got to say, when he probably 15 or 16, the boys did a tan run, and they're all having a little bit of a laugh beforehand. Anyone who doesn't beat the coach's son won't get a game. 3 of them beat him. So we weren't going to field a great side that day. So.
It may have been Jack Rewalt going with that, and I think I passed him pretty quickly.
Oh, that's great. So you've now made the decision to umpire. Do the umpire have is it an AFL like rookie list and senior list with the umpires?
Yeah, so we've got our rookie list where there's sort of 2 based out of most states, and then our senior list of 34 now.
Yep. So, okay, so fast track through that. You've made that. Then you're coming up to your first game. Terry, did you watch his first game? What was your first game before we get into that?
Yeah, so I had St Kilda Melbourne at Marvel. So, yeah, had to wait till I think it was round 11.
In 2015?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so it was a long wait to sort of get that opportunity. I was the last of the new group coming through, but just at the end of the bye rounds. And
the most nervous moment? The opening bounce.
Did you have the bounce?
So I had the bounce. Yeah,
straight in.
So the opening bounce, you just sit there and hold your breath and just go, please get it up straight. The rest of the game will look after itself. But if you stuff the first bounce of your first game, that's a disaster.
That's brilliant. Throwing him into the deep end early. Yeah,
well, it was funny as well, because so we'd had a bit of a discussion about it all week, and a couple of the other new guys had come in earlier in the year and hadn't had the first bounce and recalled theirs. So I thought, stuff it, I'll jump straight into it. But my sister was getting into me all week, just going, "Oh, don't recall it. Make sure you don't stuff it up." And then she was probably more nervous than anyone, because she was like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" Because at the St Kilda home games, they have this like heartbeat sound before the game. And I didn't know if it was my own or if it was actually from the stadium. So. I hadn't been nervous all week. Not too nervous anyway, nothing out of control, but waiting for that first bounce, and St Kilda were laid out onto the ground. So we were supposed to go on the start siren. The clock had sort of gone down to 0, and they still weren't in position. I was like, what do we do here?
Need authority early. Just really get into it.
I was like, oh, you're on my time now. Let's go.
What's worse, messing that bouncer or Dave getting angry at you because you missed the goal line call? What do you think? What do you think would be worse?
Well, I'm not a goal umpire, so So I'll take for me, it's probably worse to get that bounce stuff.
Just on that, the umpires always are quick to deflect. That's what happened last night. So Ray, I went up to Ray and I go, "Mate, how can you call that play on about, and he goes, "Just look like I'm wearing a hat." And I said, "Well, okay, you're clearly easy to deflect there."
Ray's taught me well.
Yeah.
Haven't you asked for an apology from the umpires? Was it something
I didn't ask. I said we'll probably get one.
Have you?
I haven't been to the club this morning, so we'll wait and see. Yeah,
Gonna call Gil after this.
I'll call. Gil was up there, so.
Oh yeah, I saw him in the crowd. I don't think he liked.
Yeah, no,
he was hoping that you'd get a
What about Gil in the crowd? There's 1 minute to go. There's less than a kick in it. And Gil looked like he was going to sleep.
I know.
He didn't really look that engaged.
No.
I think he was just hoping that they'd get an extra couple so that one goal that they missed wasn't going to be a problem.
They would have loved the Gold Coast beating us. But anyway, so just on that, so debut game, normally what happens in the rooms, you present your jumper, your parents are there, whatever. Do you present him the green top or whatever in the umpire rooms before the game?
No, but we were invited down, which again was a bit strange. I mean, sort of been everywhere normally around footy, so obviously in coaching and playing, up in the corporates, up in the media areas. The only place that I'd never been is down with the umpires. So it was just a different environment again. I think anyone that goes into the rooms always sort of finds it a bit different, going into an AFL room with the players and just their dynamic. It was very much, you felt like you were out of place. Very inviting, but you still, that's their domain. So it was interesting, but it was good because it's another part of the journey. I mean, you watch, as your parents would have, you watch your kid playing from under 10s and going through it, and then he made the change or the flip over from playing to umpiring, and then to get that first moment at the absolute elite level, it's another step, another tick off sort of thing. So it was a good day.
Now, just on umpiring and obviously playing, all you have to do is play and worry about that, and you might do little sort of ventures like this, and I'm doing a podcast, that kind of thing. But for you as an umpire, you still have you got a job during the week? And just talk us through that. What do you do week-to-week basis? How much time do you spend on umpiring during the week? And obviously your weekends are taken up.
Yeah, so I'm a PE and health teacher as well. So I've been working that job sort of alongside my umpiring for 3 years now. So out at Templestowe College, sort of the old stomping grounds out there. But so I work 3 days a week, and in previous years have been 4 days a week there. So my sort of Monday through to sort of Wednesday, Thursday, I'll work there, and then I'll spend those sort of last 2 days sort of fine tuning into the weekend. And then if we have to travel, because we umpire across the country as well, then leave the Friday open so we can travel and do that. But Tuesday, Thursday nights we train as a group, and then on sort of most other days you're doing something. So whether it's jumping on the exercise bike or going for a swim, we've got a pretty good sort of program associated with that. But so we got Tuesday, Thursday nights are our big ones, and we're usually in there from sort of 4:30 through to 8:30. So it's a long sort of night.
The one thing that I've been fascinated with the conversation around these guys is everyone else is full time. They need to go full time. What would they do? I mean, how would they actually fill in the hours? I mean, how much video? You imagine yourself. How much video can you watch in a week? Yeah. And is there any guarantee that by watching more video that when you're 16 Ks into your game and there's 60,000 people and you're going to make that split decision, is the watching the videos going to make any difference to that call? And the difference that I sort of see is if they had a team that they could actually get out and train in real time, and so there was a group of 40 players that were available to them, it might be some value to be out there more often. But you've got a team that you can work on structures and things. They can't actually work on their trade during the week. So I can't for the life of me figure out how they would improve by going full time.
And even on that, like we don't even spend full time at the club. Like today's off, Thursday's off for us, Friday's a half day. So you're spending 2.5 full days out of 5 at the club, and we have players that have to go through meetings, weights, training, all that kind of thing. So you're right on that point. I mean, maybe it changes to you guys come to every session across all 10, say, Victorian clubs, and maybe you do cover the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and umpire every session, but it's still probably not enough.
Do the clubs want them there? I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think pre-season they do.
Yeah, we want them pre-season every session. Yeah, every
but
session.
do they actually want them there, or are they getting in the way in season?
I think just if they're there for the training sessions, I would love it, because we love it that they're there during pre-season, because then we can ask them about the rules that might be in place, or the interpretations of contests and all that kind of thing. And if you're in there from a Monday to Friday kind of at every training session, so it's probably 3 during the week, then you're just getting the updated from that week, what they're really focusing on, or what's happened, or anything like that. That I reckon we'd love it. They're there because we do encourage it over pre-season. Yeah,
you did. You would have seen it in the Richmond rooms, Bulldogs rooms when you were a kid growing up. The dynamic you mentioned before, did you take a while to get used to that as well? Because you would have been in the rooms, especially, as a young teenager and going into your adult life as well, in the Richmond rooms in particular. Did you notice that a lot?
Yeah, I suppose it's a different dynamic where footy clubs, you have the music pumping and everyone's wanted to sort of rev themselves up, getting ready to go. Maybe not everyone in the rooms, but you definitely got that sort of up tempo, sort of ready to go. Whereas the umpires, it's very much relaxed and try to stay sort of steady, because we're just reacting upon whatever's coming at us. So we need to stay pretty calm, because if you're sort of upbeat, you might go jumping at things. So there's definitely that different dynamic. But I think sort of being in and around clubs and being around footy for a long period of time has really helped me, because I sort of understand a little bit what the players are going through, and maybe when they're sort of sometimes venting towards us and those sorts of things, I understand, okay, well, this might be the reasons why, and it helps sort of play off that.
There's scrutiny on players talking back to umpires. I think it was a call yesterday. Was it in your game? Or it was a game yesterday that there was probably one that you're like, well, what did he say to make that call? It turned into a 50. And do you see that's tightening up because people are getting more offended by it, or do you see it tightening up because maybe that's being brought down from the top?
Yeah, I think especially with the abuse side of things, a lot of the AFL umpires we don't take it to heart, and it may not really affect us, but we do need to set an example for the local levels of footy and for suburban footy. And it's sort of one of those ones where people go, oh, why do you have to do it? But when we get to the top level, as Dad said earlier, you sort of just have that white noise from the crowd. But if people see it at AFL level and say, okay, well, you can go and say that to an umpire. We've got big issues trying to get enough umpires for every game across the country. And so that's where those sort of more demonstrative acts, or the sort of really clear abuse free kicks, that's why they come in.
Now, we've spoken about your transition from playing to coach, playing to umpire. Now, Terry, talk a little bit about your career and your career path, going from playing to coaching in the 90s, was it? Back then, yeah. So what was that sort of transition like for you? Did you always know you wanted to be a coach while you were playing?
Not really. I sort of got thrown into it to a degree. My preference in the early stages was to go into sport management, so the other side of it. There wasn't as many roles open back then as what there is now, but let's call it head of footy was where I was probably originally starting to go. So my background, I come through the time where you played and coached, or played and worked at the same time. And so from my point of view, I was working in sales. I worked at GDV9 in Richmond with Sky Channel. So I was head of sales for Sky Channel while I was my last couple of years of playing. So you're sort of flipping between the two. So once I finished playing, I got into a coaching role at reserves, because that was basically all that was there back in those days was head coach, assistant coach, and head of footy, and that was basically it. So when I finished, I got an opportunity to be an assistant coach, and I still worked at Sky Channel. But then I got asked to go full time with the Bulldogs, which was full time head of footy. So that opportunity presented itself. So I flipped from working at Sky Channel to going head of footy, but Alan Joyce was the coach at the time. He only lasted for about half the season, and I was there as head of football. Obviously, had played with the club and played premierships with the Hawks, so they anointed me as the interim coach, which is all the go at the moment. Now, so I got the interim coaching gig then, and ended up with the role the next year. So I sort of, I fell into it to a degree, and probably if I had had my way, it would have ended up going down the sport management role more so.
Now, I heard from someone during the week, you might remember this name, Ron Bongetti.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So I heard during the week that you might have been a pioneer and way ahead of your time. Apparently, you used to go into his office. He had an office and a whiteboard up there, and used to talk to me. Obviously, had a basketball background, and used to talk about the rolling zones and playing in front of. So teams had to go through 18 players on the field and that kind of thing. So that was well before now. That's the whole craze about AFL footy and that. So what were you trying to implement back then in terms of that?
Yeah, I suppose all that had happened for 100 years in the game is no one had challenged how the game was played. I mean, it was, full back line, half back line, centre line, et cetera, et cetera. Yep. Everyone played their positions. We kicked from contest to contest, and that was just it. Now, if you had the best side, that's great. Leave it alone. Don't do anything because you're the best side. And the way it was played then, usually it was the best natural
talent,
ball winners and talent won the premiership each and every year. If you didn't have the best side, my thoughts was, well, we've got to challenge convention and start to look at, well, how can we do things marginally different? How can we be setting screens to release our forwards? How can we be pushing back and perhaps playing more of a zone defence than just the complete man-on-mans, and just try to trick it up a little bit? And the Bulldogs were great. When I first got there, it was fascinating. 15 years later, I went to Richmond, and because Richmond were in trouble financially then, I got no opportunity to go overseas, do things, where back in the 90s I was doing that with the Dogs. So, I mean, that's where I went overseas, and we first were the first club to start warming up on ground.
Yep.
Only just for the fact that I went to a couple of the NFL games, and I was down in Jacksonville with the Guars down there. I'm standing on the ground going, why do we warm up in this little room trying to kick the ball 5 metres, running up and down on the spot, where these guys are getting out? We wonder why we're pinging hammies at the start of games, and we want the bloke to run out first up, lace out, and either kick it beautifully or take it in front of his hands. But we don't do it beforehand. So we started just experimenting with all those sort of little things, and all of them are. People sort of were a bit, what are they doing? All of them are 1%ers, but you put 4 or 5 different things that you bring back, and all of a sudden you're 5 or 10% advanced on where others are, and you can get a win. And I can remember when we started the pre-game warm-ups, some of the other coaches are going, oh, they're show ponies, just what are they doing? And we jumped that season, and I think we were 8-2. At the start of the year. By the end of the year, every single other club was doing it, and by grand final day, everyone.
You were
was
just
doing
the early adopter of that.
Yeah, I pinched it from somewhere else. I mean, all good things you could steal. It's just a matter of having a look, getting out, scoping what's available. But I think from the year 2000 was the big change, because what happened was the coaches started becoming full-time rather than part-time, so they had more time to look at things. And I can remember going up to the 2000 Olympics, and all the coaches then were starting to go and have a look at hockey, go and have a look at soccer and basketball, and sort of seeing all the transition games and how they were setting up completely different to what we were doing. As I said, some of my NFL trips, I'd go with their coaches and sort of say, we got 18 men on the field, you as defensive coaches, how would you structure it up? And they would sort of set up without the knowledge of our game. We watch video, and just allow them to give us a different concept. Now, sometimes you go away and go, can't do that. But at other times you go, we could probably pinch a little bit of that and put it into what we're doing. So the game just completely opened up from nobody having the time to do that. Like my premiership coach, the late Alan Jeans, he was senior sergeant in the police force. So, I mean, he was working in the police force all day and then just coming down like all of us at the end of the night doing an hour and a half training where you basically just doing circle work or nothing that actually was game.
You didn't have time.
Related.
Yeah, you didn't have time.
Didn't have time to think about it or plan it or do any of that. So it changed when it went full time.
Now, Brent, did you used to wake up in the morning, come downstairs in the lounge room, and it was just circles and arrows and photos and videos everywhere?
Not quite, but you'd always sort of. From my side of things, I always would try to get down to the clubs as much as possible. I was that little kid that always, and I'm sure you've seen the kids in and around the club now, but I was always hanging around, and whether it was just standing by the side of the gym or trying to get into a team meeting just to see what was happening, I was always trying to hang around it.
Any players that you remember that bullied you around a bit or gave you a hard time running around the club?
You'd have some good stories.
Yeah, no, there was never anyone that was sort of trying to bully me around too much, but I think that's probably because you wanted to make sure you looked after. I know I used to have Paul DiMartina's number on the back of my jumper, and he was sort of in and out of the team, so I like to think that I sort of helped him on his way across that time. But I just used to hang out, and probably more so at Richmond when you're sort of coming through your teen years, that the guys used to test you out a little bit more. And I played in a practice match with Richmond where sort of looking at the board of where I was lining up, and Jake King came across to me and sort of pointed. He goes, "I see that person in the white team," and it was his name. "And I see that person in the black team." "Yep, yeah, that's my name." He goes, "If you go near that name, I'll knock you out." And as a 16, 17-year-old kid, I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And then as soon as I walked away, I was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to get knocked out by Jake King."
That's awesome. Now, Terry, like obviously, as you said, that the AFL got more professional as the years went on. Did you always want to be a family club where you had your kids there and other players could bring in their kids? And obviously it's a little bit different now, but I reckon it's sort of turned back towards family now. Yeah. But I reckon early in my career it wasn't like that. So did you always want to have Brent around in the rooms and players' kids around?
Yeah, very much so. And we probably were a little bit luckier because we played our games with the Tigers, in particular at the MCG. So you had Punt Road right next door. So we used to go back into the gym and entertain all the families, kids, everyone running around there straight after games. So it wasn't so sort of corporate.
Yep.
It's just easier. Just open up the gym, let them run right. So I sort of always had the feel for that being the case, but. It's funny, I mean, when I was at the Bulldogs, we had a winning environment, even though we didn't win one, but we were, you went to most games expecting you'd win, played in finals most of the time. So there is a different environment when it's up, and you got to understand that.
Yep.
The times when you're going in and it's a losing environment and everyone's sort of looking over their shoulders, and it just makes it more difficult for it to be quite as inclusive.
Yes.
And I mean, you've almost got to try harder in those times, but it is much more difficult. So I found the whole Richmond experience and a much bigger club. The Bulldogs was easy because everyone knew everyone at the Doggies, and to me, Hawthorn was known as the family club, but I've always felt that the Bulldogs was a real inclusive family club because it just was like a local footy club where Richmond much bigger and a much more losing environment at the time. So that was a lot more difficult.
Speaking of the losing environments, a lot of coaches getting the sack this season and the interim, and you've been through that side too, where, mid to late season, and probably was late season. Well, maybe this time, was it this time?
It was about round 12 or 13, I think my exit.
Your exit. So from that transition to going from being, that thinking about 1 week at a time and next thing's happening and then all of a sudden not. What was that transition like?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I've probably seen nearly all three of them. So mid-season I went in as an interim coach Mid-season, I went out as the senior coach, and the other one was that obviously with the Bulldogs, I was in the Brad Scott position where I left the Bulldogs expecting that there was going to be a job open, and all of a sudden the interim coach, which was Roosie, started doing a really great job, and the players and supporters sort of got behind him, and you were watching from the outside, so slipping away a little bit there. So I suppose I've sort of seen it from all of those sides. The difficulty, the one that's the most difficult is the sacked coach. And for me, I knew because it was my second job, once I finished on the Friday night, I think let's call it round 12, the Friday night of round 12, I knew that was the end of my coaching stint. So what you do after that is it's very awkward because you go from all-encompassing 24/7 to the next morning going, I've got the rest of my life to live, and footy's still going on and you're not a part of footy, and most coaches go away at that stage. But it was for Brent, it was his year 12. So he's trying to get drafted, going through year 12, trying to do what he's doing there. He's captaining the school team. Yep. If I just sort of say, I've had a hard time, we're all packing up and going to Bali, well, I'm not doing my job as a dad either, sort of thing. So I was sort of locked into, no, I've got to stay around. It does impact you. I mean, so much so that I really didn't want to leave the house because you've been under the pump virtually, well, because we lost our first 4 games. So it was dead man walking at round 4, and you go through another 2 months of just being in the paper, having the microphones in your face all the time. It was it was a really difficult time, and made even more awkward when you finished and just trying to find out what you're going to do next. And it was interesting. I'd done a lot in the media, so my initial reaction was, well, clearly I'll go back into the media when I'm finished, because I'd written for the Herald Sun, I'd sat on the couch. So I'd sort of broad brushed a lot of what was going on through the media areas. But what I hadn't factored in was so bad were our losses and the perception of yourself as a coach, you're now seen as a failure. So not one media door opened up for me to go back into the media, because they say, well, no, what do we want him for? I mean, how's he going to tell us anything because he failed? Well, you didn't fail the whole journey. You actually just failed your last little bit. If that had been in the middle of your journey, no one would even care about that. But because it was the last part of your journey, just the doors didn't open, and it was really an awkward time for 3 months about what is going to come next. Do I go back corporately? But I'd been out of the corporate scene for 12, 15 years. So all the people that I sort of knew were almost retired from that point of view. My bosses and people that were around at the time had all sort of moved on. So, it took a bit of manoeuvring, but you just got to reinvent yourself. I mean, it's like anything. I think the biggest thing in any industry is resilience. And it doesn't matter whether you're a player, doesn't matter whether you're corporate-wise, doesn't matter coaching-wise. You just got to be resilient and just got to keep knocking on doors and keep working out what you're going to do. And probably what worked for me eventually was I went, what part isn't being utilised in the media? I went list management. And I self-named myself the list manager and did that cop a little bit on social media in the early days. List manager, what you did to Richmond. I could have used a couple of other names for what I was, but my whole point was just what I am going to now concentrate on is spending my time reviewing, analysing lists and seeing where it goes. And at first it didn't go anywhere much at all, but all of a sudden I started doing a body of work and then got a couple of opportunities. Hutchie opened the door to go on Future Stars. People like in the media was sort of going, well, Collingwood's not going very good at the moment. Who can we get to analyse what's gone wrong? This is what Terry's doing. Can you just do an article for us? So it just was dribs and drabs in the original stages, but it just opened up and complete other door, which now I've done for sort of a decade. That's opened up other doors again. So you just got to keep at it.
Yeah. Now I want to backtrack a little bit because you spoke about how hard it was during the time for you and the family and stuff. And this was before social media even happened. And you were in year 12. I couldn't even imagine what would happen nowadays, like kids going through it, with their parents going through such a big name in the AFL, that happening to it. How did you cope during that time? Obviously all your mates would know what's happening, people you play footy against, that kind of thing. So yeah, it was pre social media, but it still would have influenced you quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose from my side of things is that everyone sees something different and goes, "Oh, how did you deal with it?" But that's just what we knew.
Yep.
Was that's how life was, and that's what we did. So I suppose my big focus was just making sure that Dad was all right and the rest of the family members were okay. So that was my big role. I remember in Dad's last week at Richmond, sort of sitting up most nights to 1, 2 in the morning with him and maybe a couple of the assistant coaches that were coming through at the time, and just having a chat and just being there to sort of support each other and to go through that, and then waking up the next day and going to school and trying to make sure that I'm sort of doing it as well as I could there. But that's just what it was, and I didn't know any different. So it's just making sure I supported everyone as best as possible.
I always said one thing to them when I went back into coaching. I sort of said, I can guarantee you during school life that one of two things is going to happen. If we're winning and going really well, everyone will say your old man's a genius. And if we're losing and going really badly, they'll say he's an absolute drop kick. I sort of said, neither's correct.
Yep.
I mean, it lies somewhere in the middle, and always remember that, no matter which end it's at.
You're never as high as what you are, and never as low.
No, it just lands somewhere in the middle. I'm trying to sort of keep things at least a little bit balanced off like that.
Except for the fact that you're an AFL Hall of Famer. So do you now look back and go, well, sorry, Tigers, but you might have got that one a little bit wrong. Of the time you got as well, maybe not the length that you probably deserved.
Could have had the board that Dimmer had a couple of years ago and kept him on and won a flag. You never know. 2011 or 12, he could have won a flag.
No, look, I'm comfortable with my lot. As I sort of said, of the journey, nearly every part of the journey went well except for the last part. Now, if that had happened 15 years earlier, you wouldn't have even blinked. It's only when it's the last bit that it's a bit frustrating because everyone wants the happy ending, but not everyone gets the happy ending, and particularly coaching.
Well, you're a victim of the moment, aren't you? It happens right on, so that's the thing that people remember.
But I always sit there and go, what I'm comfortable with both of my coaching stints is when I left the Bulldogs, I left them with a young Bob Murphy, a young Brian Lake, a young Gene Siracusa, a young Lindsay Gilby. Those guys all went on. Boydie was there, as an 18, 19-year-old at the time. All those guys went on to play prelim finals together. When I left Richmond, it was a young Rance, a young Cochin, a young Rewalt, a young Edwards. Dusty was the end of my year. He came to the club. So that group went on. Now, I didn't have either of them when they were at their peaks, but at least, in my belief, we left the next coach with a better lot, and a chance, even though it was still, for both of them, it was still probably 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the track. But at least they had good young talent to actually sort of go on with. So I could sit back and see that and sort of be comfortable with that side of it, helping out things like we went to America to help design the new punt road facilities. Well, that was all done in our time. We went to Canberra to get the funding for the facilities all around the Indigenous culture and learning facility that was going to become part of that. So they're all things that all the coaches, you might have failed as in win-loss in your time, but there's so much else that actually goes on and surrounds it. So I'm comfortable. Am I comfortable with my win-loss at Richmond? Absolutely not. But am I comfortable that, well, we might have put the place in a better spot to go forward? I'm totally comfortable with that.
From the outside looking into, the average person who watches footy, they don't really get an insight into what a player is really like, and especially these days. I mean, social media is helping a lot, but in your day, and then also once you're coaching as well, what is Terry really like? And I think an insight that I wanted to share, which, if you remember this, we used to obviously play in the street a lot, but growing up, I did a lot of media and filming and all that sort of stuff, which kind of led to what I'm doing here. And I think one day we might have been shooting something out in the street for school. I reckon maybe early day uni. And I remember Brent came up and said, "Oh, Dad wants to have a meeting with you." And I said, "Okay, I don't think I'd ever had a meeting in my life." And so I've come over and sat down by the pool at your house, and it's just the two of us. And he said, "What do you want to do? What do you want to do with your filming, and where do you want to go?" And I said, "Look, I don't really know yet. I love footy, love filming." And he said, "Well, edit me something. Edit me up a clip of some highlights." So I went back home and got all excited and got all this footage together and cut it up to Coldplay, Speed of Sound, of course.
Great tune.
Why wouldn't you? Came back and sat down and watched it with you in your theatre room, and we sat down together, and you were silent for 2.5 minutes and watched it, and then said, all right, I'm gonna talk to some people for you," which is unbelievable to think, like a ex-AFL player, a current coach at the time. You were coaching well into your time at Richmond, and to do that, not needing to whatsoever, is, in my eyes, amazing. And I don't think people see that side of players and coaches and stuff like that. But then that led me to work at the club with you.
Yep.
So thank you, first of all, for that.
My pleasure.
It was a great.
It's good to see. It's good to see you've come a long way.
But one thing that I learnt from my time, because I had the privilege of being 3 seasons in the coach's box, and it's a very sort of sacred place, the coach's box. One thing that I learnt.
It's a crazy place.
It is a crazy place, and the level of it is an insane world to be in. And 2 things that I learned actually from you is that 2 things you hate. One was if the player tried to kick it to the goal line or for goal, had a shot for goal, and kicked it to the goal line instead of setting it right up. You hated that. If the ball got punched through, you were on the phone on the blower immediately. Am I right?
I had a theory. Zacko, this was my theory.
Yep.
Don't be telling me you think you can kick it. You can either kick it 5 metres through, or you set it up,
or 30 centimetres past.
Yeah. Well, that's it.
That's the thing, though. That's the funny thing. I remember you blasting someone who just got it across the line, even though they kicked the goal, because you knew you didn't have the distance. You got lucky this time. So that was one thing.
Yeah, there was a midget on the goal line.
yeah. So there's one thing that you hated. The second thing you hated was which I'm assuming all coaches probably hate this one, is a goal from a defensive stoppage. And that's
correct?
Watching today, do you still see that and get frustrated?
I analyse. I still sit there, even not when I'm working in the media. If I'm sitting at home, I still got a habit of stopping the thing, which drives everyone crazy.
So you can't just watch
us nuts.
Because they're watching it live.
Oh, even with people. Okay.
Yeah, so they're watching it live, and I'll go, no, go back, watch this, and have a look where he wraps around there and gets himself free. What was this guy like? So you still got that little bit of coaching.
You can't just watch a game of footy.
I'll sit.
It's actually sad, isn't it?
We'll sit there and be like, we just want to watch the game. Just let us watch. No.
We're 17 minutes behind.
If you say you should be wrapping around the back here rather than.
Well, that brings me to my point. Part of my role in the coach's box was to control that screen that was sitting in front of you. I don't even know if you knew that was my job at the time, but I used to do that for the screens that were either going down to the clubs, to the players at the quarter time breaks, and I also used to do it to the TV that was on the bench, and then your screen too. Now back then the technology wasn't ideal. Probably now it's unbelievable. It was as simple as me rewinding the current footage that was on the screen, the Channel 7 footage, and then playing it back. And I remember there was a goal from a defensive stoppage, and you'd gone off. It was on for young and old at this point, and you wanted to know whose fault it was. It was your number one thing. So that's my job. All right, I know. I've got to find this stoppage. Now, in the moment I saw this defensive stoppage happen, and Channel 7 had cut to something else. So I had lost. There was no footage in that moment in time. So as soon as the goal got kicked, I knew it was coming. Where's the replay? I want the replay. And I'm up the back of the box going, let's just wait until a couple of seconds. Hopefully the TV coverage will show it. And a couple of seconds went by, nothing. A couple of seconds went by and David King's in front of me, turns around and has a look. I was like, where's the footage? Where's the replay? And then you've gone, where's the replay? With maybe a few other. I was probably the most nervous I've ever been in any job I've ever had. And it wasn't my fault. I just want to put it out there now.
You didn't want to talk up, did you? You didn't want to say anything.
I wasn't going to say a word. I just hoped that it would fix itself. And I don't think it ever went ahead. I think someone else found out who it was and you found out pretty quick. And then it was their fault rather than being my fault, which I'm happy.
And now that's why you don't need runners, because all us crazy coaches do is go out and stress the bloke out during the game rather than worrying about it after the game. You can't do anything about it then.
Well, it's now. I've been in the coach's box early in the year. There's a screen that has live and there's a screen that has about a 10-second delay.
Yep.
So the coaches can quickly look at that. And
I wouldn't have had a job at all.
Yeah, right. You exactly don't have to rewind anymore. It runs on a 10-second delay.
I would have been stressed out all the time.
But in terms of coach's box being that sacred place, I do remember though at some occasions there might be, a random person in the back of the box or a famous person in the back of the box, which sometimes I assume might have been a charity event or someone might have won. Yep. But was there anyone who wanted to be in the box and you said, yeah, all right, you're a famous person or anyone special that came into the coach's box and you had to think in my mind, I better not drop an F-bomb or say anything I shouldn't say?
Not particularly. I mean, we had a few people come in, famous, infamy, or famous both ways, but probably the one that I remember best up was somebody come in, they'd won a corporate raffle or something like that, and they come into the box and started giving their suggestions.
No.
I've watched it happen, and
Don't do that.
it was against the Bombers at one time, and it was like, this bloke's on, aren't you going to put anyone on James Hird? You're just letting James Hird run around by himself. And I've sort of just turned around and looked at him and rolled my eyes. And then he sort of said something else and about James Hird being, you're going to lose the game. You're just letting James Hird run around free. And I've basically turned around and told him where to go, but and that James is a reasonably good player and is getting free off his own volition because he reads the game better than anyone else, and then got my footy manager just to shuffle this bloke into the box next door with the stats boys. But
did you go straight to commercial department that week and said no more people in the box? Yeah.
Correct.
That story got told every time there was a guest in the box. That person got told that story every single time there was a guest in the box, so they knew to shut their mouth. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Well, I still remember it.
So you've done playing, coaching, media. Do you want to do anything else in life? Like what's next for you?
Retirement.
Retirement.
I've actually decided to retire at the end of next year, so that'll be my last year involved with the media. I just don't want to get to the stage. I want to have remained relevant. My relevancy nowadays is probably that I watch all 9 games every week. Yep. So we're doing this podcast on a Monday. This morning I was watching your game because I did the Sydney game.
Yep.
So I flew back while your game was on yesterday. So I catch up my games on a Monday morning. I've balanced out my week to be able to do that. So when I go to work in my different media outlets, if someone rings me and sort of says, what about the goal line review, or I've got it all covered. Yep. But there's other things. I've never been to Europe in a European summer. Yeah. So me and my wife are both retiring at the end of...
Loves the sun.
Loves the sun.
The end of next year. And so...
we avoided the solid question this time.
That'll be a new part of the journey. It'll be an interesting one because since I've been 18... I've been involved in the game for every year since I've been 18. So, some other things I want to do outside.
Lovely.
And now just on you, Brent, what advice would you give a young kid who's a player, maybe thinking about umpiring, just wanting to get into that side of the game, explore it? What would something that you would love to have heard or that you did hear? I mean, you spoke a little bit about it before you spoke to Bano. What's some advice you'd give someone?
There's probably 2 things that I'd say is have a chat with someone that's umpired and just have an understanding of sort of what the pathway might be or how you could go about it. But also just go and umpire a game. I actually didn't think it was going to be as enjoyable as what was.
Yep.
I really enjoyed going into it and have loved it ever since. So go out there, do a couple of games, even if it's local footy, and you'll know pretty quickly if you like it or not.
Awesome.
Just a few quick fire questions I've got for David about you two.
Ooh,
which I found was interesting. I thought that it would be interesting to do a comparison and see if Dave knows if this is for Brent or if this is for Terry.
I didn't even know this was happening.
All right, and some of these we might have already brought up, so it might be a bit easy for you, but let's see. All right. Who has appeared 36 times on the MCG?
You have to say. Oh, actually, you would have played, in the 80s, and then we played local grounds, not moving much to the G. No, I'll say Terry, yeah.
You're right. I thought I might have tricked you on that one because I thought 36.
I was trying to count in my own mind. Yeah. I'm like, I don't think I've got 36.
Okay, so who used to go better in the Tigers time trial? Terry or Brent? In the Richmond Tigers time trial?
Well, we spoke about this. So you beat everybody. So just clarify. So it was every player bar three on your list that you beat.
Two. Yep.
Okay.
Two.
Okay. All right.
So
that's what I thought.
So you had a really fit son or you had an unfit list.
Can I just say one thing on that very quickly? I can remember going for a run when he was about 15 and we'd got up for a game of tennis and we sort of said, we'll run back. I go, yeah, no worries, I've got you covered. It was about a 3K run and he beat me by 700 metres. and I've gone, how bad have I got?
Is that the moment as a dad where you just, I'm
shattered.
done.
And I'll never race him again. But I felt a lot better when we went down to the town with the boys and he come second or third. I thought, phew, I'm not going as bad as
you remember that moment.
Yeah, correct.
That's brilliant.
All right, last one. Brent or Terry, involved in a VFL grand final?
Ooh. Terry.
Both. You umpired a VFL grand final.
You have, haven't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah, VFL grand final before getting onto the AFL list.
Ooh, okay. All right. Got that wrong.
There you go.
All right.
Brent versus Terry.
So two out of 3. 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3 ain't bad. Brent, just a quick one. Do you guys get memos before the game about stuff that might have happened that week? Obviously, during the week, you spoke about how much you would prepare for that week that you're about to umpire. But something like yesterday's game where Dave kicks a goal that wasn't counted, the day before that happened and an umpire did stop the game and they had to ball it up because they were wrong. Do you guys know about that or are aware of it and then therefore change a decision in that moment, do you think?
So we don't necessarily change sort of decisions moment to moment, but we quite regularly sort of, if we see something on the Friday, especially the Friday night footy, if we're watching the game, we'll shoot a message to our coaches and be like, hey, was that holding the ball or should have it been this? And then if there's anything that's sort of come up a couple of times throughout the weekend, we'll usually have sort of a head coach ring us and say, hey, this has popped up a couple of times, just be aware of it. So yeah, there's definitely a couple of times where we sort of just make sure that we're mindful of different sort of tactics that are being used so that we sort of pull the right rein on game day.
But I guess that people always criticise the rule of the week. But I guess in theory, it's really actually just to try to improve anything that might have gone wrong.
Well, I mean, we get coached on different aspects, and everyone says that there's a rule of the week, but we'd get coached on 8 to 10 different decisions in which we make throughout a week every week. So if there might be some sort of realigning to make sure that we are correct, but there's definitely no.
But which you'd understand, you'd understand that exactly, because what happens is then you might over adjust, which happens, and so same sort of thing. If they didn't believe they were tight enough on a particular interpretation, so therefore you train it. Sometimes then you overcorrect, and you're too tight on that same interpretation. So it's just getting that balance right.
Yeah, and you understand as a player, AFL is so hard of a game to 1 play, 2 coach, and 3 then umpire. It's not a black and white game. It's an interpretation game where is that holding the ball? Is that high? Did he contribute to it? And you can understand as a player, you get frustrated on the field for an umpire, but then you sit back and go, well, mate, it's hard enough to play. I wouldn't imagine how hard it is to umpire because of that interpretation that you have to make every week. It's, as I said, you don't have a rule book where you go, all right, that's that. I have to interpret whether I think that is a free kick and that's the uniqueness of the game. That's why people love the game, but it's also that's why it's so hard. And I mean, and we keep bringing in new rules every year or new interpretations, and we've got to keep up with it as players, and then you've got to umpire it, and it's hard, it's difficult. I don't know where it's going to keep going and where it's going to get to, but you do respect them because it's so hard to just think about that and have to make that call in a split-second decision.
Yeah, I've been on the list for this is my 5th year, and I don't think we've gone into a season yet where there hasn't been some sort of change. So we're always adjusting and always adapting, and we're always asking sort of the powers to be a number of questions that maybe they haven't even sort of thought about yet. Trying to get as much as possible. So we get to sometimes the first couple of games and we're still waiting to see how it might play out before, and that's why the JLTs, as a series, it actually helps us because we can actually see some of those things go out and be sort of embedded in the game before going on.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you both in. I hope you've enjoyed having a sit and a chat.
No, thank you.
Hopefully we haven't been quite as controversial as some of you.
No, I think this is quite a smooth chat today.
We'll get much negative feedback on this one, actually, unless you guys want to drop anything that we weren't ready for.
Oh, maybe Tiger supporters might give you a bit of grief, but otherwise we're all right.
That's right. But thank you so much for coming on,
Cheers,
guys.
pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Well, mate, great chat. Wow.
How good are some of the stories? I mean, it's just awesome to hear just the different dynamic in the family. And I love the part that Terry was so raw about his time at Richmond and when it came to an end, and just sort of the impact it had on him. And I guess, and that's why I put the question to Brent about the social media and how it wasn't really around at the time. But if that kind of thing happens now and in the last couple of years when coaches get sort of sacked and let go, that the impact it has on their family and what sort of can happen to that. And he's doing year 12 as a kid, and you just got so many influences or so many people wanting to have an input around you. And he was sort of, I guess, lucky in the sense that he didn't have that social media pressure around him. But I love the chat. It was awesome.
Great to hear from both of those guys. Tune in next week. I'm going to drop a name.
Who have we got?
Steph Claire Smith.
Steph Claire Smith.
1.2 million followers on Instagram. It might be more than that, actually. I should probably check, but I'll check before next week.
Yeah.
But yes, massive influencer. She's from the Melbourne area, from near where we grew up, I think. So
big Essendon fan.
Huge Essendon fan.
Huge Essendon fan. So I'm looking forward to this chat. If you got any questions to throw Steph for us this week, get on to us at Pros and the Cons on Instagram. Send us a little DM or something, or comment on our recent post about this podcast, and we'll hopefully get a chance to ask her.
Yeah, can't wait to have a chat with her about social influencer life and what she's up to. So
just her business now, mate. She grew a business from. I want to ask her about it. But was it from Instagram or just the amount of business entities she's got?
She's got an empire now.
An empire, exactly.
Unreal. Looking
forward to it.
And if you enjoyed it, give us some nice love. Give us a rating. Give us a share.
30 ratings now.
And plus, 30 plus.
Yeah, 30 plus.
A few ugly little ones. We'll ignore those.
We're averaging at 5 stars, mate. So it's going well.
Very high ratings. It's. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. I hope you tune in next week, and we will see you then.
Yeah.
We won't see you. You'll hear us though.
Well, just on that, I just want to say I love it. That I love us getting feedback, whether it's good, neutral, negative. It's just great to be able to get some impact. This is our 5th episode in now. We're constantly learning, mate. We're not professional journalists or anything like that. So we are learning how to go about the podcast caper. So if you do have any feedback, positive, negative, or neutral, just give it to us, and we'll always review it and try and get better, mate. Because we are trying to build something here and just keep letting people tell their stories.
We're going to whack those 1-star reviews back over your head though if we follow them our way. I'll come at you.
We might do that, yeah.
Now give us those 5 stars. We might shout some 5-star reviews out next week, I reckon.
Perfect. All right. Yep. If you leave us a good review, we'll read some out.
Sounds good. All right, guys. Have a good week. See you next time.
See you guys.